well, you're very welcome to before we start. Okay, shall we get this going? Shall we kick this off?
Yeah, just remind people that we're streaming it live as well on our Facebook pages as well, so people can interact from outside.
Yeah.
Good, so I'll set that going now. People aware.
We are going live, and that if you're not comfortable, I know I just said turn your camera on, but you know, obviously if you don't want to be out there, your face out there on Facebook, then turn your camera back off again. I'm kind of used to it by now. Anyway, let's kill the music and start the discussion. Welcome everybody. One of the first things we're going to do is actually just recap what we had from some of the visuals that we had from the last session. When was that? It was way back in April, wasn't it, Paul?
No, 27th of May. Yeah.
Was it May? May. Sorry, it was May. It seems like a long time ago. I mean, one of the things that might come out in this session is how time has kind of, don't know what's happened to it. Has it stretched? Has it shrunk? Has it kind of done both? Anyway, that was back in May. It's August now, I think. So let's have a look at some of those visuals that we made. Rick, are you ready to do that? That we made from last time. Was this the very first one? So this is all about, I guess, exercise on Zoom and like kind of, can you recreate the fitness class on, there are other web discussion platforms available, obviously, but this is clearly Zoom. This is kind of Zoom fitness. A lot of people doing that at early days. This is kind of a guess about being stuck indoors when the weather's really good. This is an interesting one. And this actually led to quite a big discussion about motivation, how to bring about motivation, why people's motivations are so low, what motivates people. And that was quite a big chunk of the last discussion. I think a lot of people were talking about actually it's other people that motivate them, especially when it comes to things like team sports or doing the Zoom stuff together. Let's move through. This is, I guess, is about brain training and brain sweat as well, by the looks of it. And how this is interesting because obviously your mental activity connects with your physical activity, but how exactly does that work? And I mean, can we talk about having a kind of fit brain as well as a fit body? And how do those two things interact, I suppose? We talked about a bit about that last time, and I guess it ties into this idea of mental well-being and mental health as well. Let's flick through. This, I guess, is about cooking as a form of activity. Chris, there's another two of you wanting to join in on the thing as well. This is about places of worship being, I mean, obviously things have changed a little bit, but I don't, what's the situation now? Because I'm based down in London and we're actually opposite a mosque here on our street in Poplar. That's back open, although it's kind of doing three services on a Friday instead of one, just to keep the social distancing happening. So that was an interesting discussion. And how does that affect activity, people getting active? So that was a element of discussion last time. This is about the long waits, and I guess in a way we're still in this position, this kind of waiting to get back to normal. I mean, Rick's been doing the visuals for these, and he's on the other side of the studio here. But I mean, you've got day 512 there. That doesn't seem like such a kind of crazy idea now. It did at the time, but I mean, when will it end? is another question. And how do we actually get ready for that as well, I suppose, is the implication there. Is that the last one, Rick, or is there more? Oh, yeah, I guess that's the same thing that's followed on from that. You know, what is our route back to normality? And what is that normality going to look like? Is it the same normal that we've left? Is it a circular walk, or is it a walk to another place altogether? And that was, I think that was the last, was that the last visual, Rick? Yeah, and I think it's quite an interesting visual. Maybe we should just leave it on that for now. So that's kind of the last session that we had. Really interesting discussion, really thought-provoking. A lot's happened since then. At the same time, we're all still in some kind of lockdown or other. So we're still on the road to normality. So yeah, that's where we are with the visuals. Before we really kick off the main discussion, I just want to bring in Adam, because since then as well, there's been a lot of work done in terms of getting people to do surveys and finding out what people have had to say on this survey. Yeah, there's quite an interesting few insights that have come from that. So maybe, Adam, you want to just chime in to begin with on the survey, and then we'll just go straight into the discussion. How does that sound?
Yeah, sure. Morning, everyone. So I've been helping run the survey as part of this project. We just thought it'd be useful to have a quick look at what it's saying so far. So I've got 5 kind of things I've had a look at that I'll go through. So the first thing we looked in the survey is around people's kind of activity levels, broadly speaking, before lockdown and since lockdown. And overall, I think we had 31% saying they were classed as inactive in the Sport England terminology of that before lockdown. It's increased to 45% since lockdown.
Yeah.
And when you start looking at the comments, a lot of that is people that were probably previously quite active, but things like gyms have closed.
Yeah.
They might be power sports clubs, things like that. They would tend to be the reasons that were saying for that. Those that weren't active before lockdown, they've actually become more active. So 25% of those people have said they've become more active since lockdown. And reasons they've generally given for that is lockdown's created more time for them because they've not had the same work commitments or things like that. Lockdown's this kind of long period of time. We seem to go through phases. So some people are saying, well, I noticed I put a bit of weight on in the early weeks of lockdown and felt I had to do something about it. Another one was, as lockdown guidelines have changed, actually being active was a way to kind of connect with family and friends. So going out for a walk and being able to meet people. So it was that kind of driver that was getting them to do that.
Yeah.
The other thing is just kind of other things happening that forced them to be active. So one of the examples someone gave was they got a new puppy. And that was something that they had to, like it made them be active. So that's around the kind of activity levels. The big thing around the survey was trying to understand like what's sitting behind that. So one of the areas was around like what motivates people to be active. And the biggest factor across all people was mental health and stress. That was the biggest reason people gave that motivated them to be active. But then if we looked at the 2 segments, people that say they're inactive and people that say they're active, actually there's a difference there. So the people that are inactive, their biggest motivator is that they want to lose weight, whereas people who are already active, they say their motivation is enjoyment and fun because they've already kind of got the bug and they want to keep that going. There's a big difference there. And the differences become even further away and really more noticeable to me when we look at what's like stopping people from being active. So when you look at people that say they're inactive, the biggest one is lack of motivation. Over 50% of people that are inactive saying they lack motivation, whereas the people that are active saying their biggest barriers to being active is kind of that work, home, family commitments. That's really stopping them. So there's a big difference there. But then confidence was like just jumped out to me when I was looking at it. So lack of confidence, 42% of people who are inactive said that is holding them back, where it's only 15% for those that are active. So that's almost like 3 times as many people who are inactive. And then when you start looking at some of the comments, so if I look at motivation and confidence, to give you some examples, motivation is some of the stuff people were saying was, I just don't feel it. I'm too tired. Tiredness is always an excuse for me. Being lazy, No motivation or energy after working. Mental illness makes it very hard. And then some examples around confidence kind of ties on some of the stuff said earlier. So it's being overweight, body image. I worry how I look to others. Scared to go out since COVID-19. No confidence and I don't like meeting strange people. Feel stupid and don't know where to start. So we're starting to see from the survey some of the things I think that was discussed in the last session, but we're really trying to get under the skin of, like, that gives us kind of a broad idea of like motivation and confidence, but really what is sitting behind that and what can be done is something that it's very difficult to get out of the survey. But I thought that would just a quick recap of what we've got so far. Obviously the survey is still live, still going on, it's building some useful information, but hopefully these kind of discussions can really help get under the skin of that.
I mean, one of the things I think that's really interesting is how the people that are active have got such a different perspective to those that are not so active. And they've got, you know, it's almost like, and we've got Pendle here in the background, it's almost like seeing the hill from the other side. Do you know what I mean? And I think that could be a really interesting thing to discuss. Does anyone want to, I don't know if that made sense in terms of a report of the survey. Does anyone want to ask Adam any questions about this survey and what it's kind of suggesting? Or do we want to go straight on and talk about this question of motivation and confidence? I think, you know, confidence is such a big thing. What's he saying? 45% of people saying they felt that they lacked in confidence. Where do we want to go with this? It's kind of up to you. That's the way Talkioki works. Any questions? From anybody? I'm gonna just, you know, I'm just gonna put that out there. What do people think? And maybe you can ask a question like this: which side of the hill are people in this chat? Do they feel they're on the motivated side, where reasons for inactivity or a lack of time, or do they feel on the unmotivated side? Maybe we could have a little poll and decide, you know, see where people are kind of standing on this one. So yeah, go on, Paul.
Yeah, well, I'm definitely on the Pendle side of the hill. It's the right side of the hill.
Yeah.
It looks best on that side, yeah. I mean, I think, obviously we're involved in some of the engagement side through this, but then hopefully, you know, we're desperate to kind of get out and talk to people a little bit face to face. What I find is quite interesting is that we talked a lot about the social aspect of kind of what motivates people to get out, but that's coming through quite low on the survey. You know, the social bit is quite low, and I just wonder if there's something about how those two things need to be interlinked a little bit more, which could help with confidence if you could go with other people, if that's the thing to do, but whether there's a connection between those two elements.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. The last chat that we did, I mean, I guess it kind of depends how you talk about social, because I think a lot of it was kind of peer pressure, and is that the same as like a sort of positive? In a way, it's a kind of negative social kind of. I don't know what do other people think, but it was like people felt that if they were doing stuff in a group, they felt the need to carry on doing it in the group. So I don't know if that's a positive or a negative social motivation. Amy, welcome. You got your hand up. Thank you. What's your point?
I just thought I'd chip in, seeing as no one was saying anything.
Yep. Good one.
So I'm a social. I'm a social prescriber for Burnley, Pendle and Rosendale Council for Voluntary Service. So working with my clients, I would see that social side of it was a huge thing in motivation. Because I work with a lot of people who don't have sort of social networks. I mean, for people like myself, I could go out with my partner or a friend, and that would motivate each other. Whereas a lot of the people I work with don't have that. And I think when you might go to the gym or something like that, it seems as though you're sort of singled out, you're different from everybody else. Whereas if you've got something where, if you can incorporate that into activity, so that people are able to meet up with other people who are in the same boat, and sort of sympathise with the position that they're in, I think that would really help to motivate people. So
you think the social element is quite key?
Yeah, I think it's huge. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, is it this thing? Because I think last week people were saying, like, if they're part of a team or part of a kind of exercise circle, they kind of almost feel like they don't want to let the side down.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
Okay, and that's an interesting point. And one that I'm going to come back to you in a second, Adam, and see how this might be reflected in the survey. Lisa, you've got your hand up.
Right, that's it. I'm unmuted, aren't I? Yeah, I mean, from a personal perspective, I had to shield for 4 months. Yeah. Couldn't see anyone, lived on my own. It was horrible. Then they opened the pools again, and I'm quite an avid swimmer. And I've been going back to the pool, seeing the people I usually see, and it is that sense of being part of something that's really important, and it is that driver. Because I could have gone out walking, I could have done, wandered around the parks and done outside activity, but work took over, and I did nothing for 4 months. But as soon as the pools opened and I could get back to them, I was straight in there, and suddenly I've got all my networks back. And my biggest fear now is that wavelengths will be shut again by the end of the week.
Really?
Yeah, that's my biggest fear. That,
yeah,
it will be that they will look at the facilities that are available, and the government will take a sweeping decision that they will be shut. And like Amy said, when you don't have people you live with, when you don't have those big social connections, you rely on the other ones that you make that we haven't had around us. So I think being active is really important, that you're doing it with somebody else, because they give you that sort of that oomph to do it, don't they? They give you that, want to go and do it.
That's really interesting. I mean, in terms of like going to the pool, is it a social thing for you? I mean, you can't really talk to people when you're under the water, but describe the...
I go to an early bird session, which is for people who go every day but aren't that good. So when you're there, you do get the opportunity to talk to people, because you're all in your own lanes, and you might just talk while you're swimming up and down. We're not talking professional swimmers here. Long way from it. But also, when we're queued up to go in, with 10 minutes wait there, we talk then. When you're coming out and you're in the shower, you have a bit of a conversation then. It's those little bits that make you feel connected over having it's not a social event per se, but it is. You're doing something that makes you feel good anyway, and there's people around you who are also doing that. So you feel part of something.
Yeah. Okay. Do you think we underestimate the social side, or is that kind of clear? You think that?
I think a lot of people do underestimate the social side of it. They don't realise how big it can be in such a simple scenario. So, going out for a walk is massively important for people. But if you do it on your own, you don't get the same enjoyment as doing it with somebody else. Absolutely,
absolutely. Okay, so where are we going to go with here? Do we want to talk about this social versus, how's that not being, it seems that, I guess, in a way, the more social people are the people that will come and have a conversation about it anyway. So maybe we're getting that sense of like, we're the social people that like to have a chat about things. I mean, Adam, how is this, in terms of the survey, this is not coming out, this social element in the survey. Is it because we've just got more social people that like to have a chat? Is there a different reason? Is it just about the questions? I mean, what do you think about this social side?
Like the survey's still out, so I've only had a quick kind of skim and snapshot of it. I was going to pick up on something Amy had mentioned actually around like almost the confidence side and things like that. But I'm looking at the kind of relationships in the different questions. So people who are inactive, the biggest reason they're saying that motivates them is losing weight. There are a lot of comments there around being overweight, body image, things like that. and then the link with that with the lack of confidence. It's almost this vicious circle of they feel overweight, they want to do something about it, but they lack the confidence because they're overweight and conscious of their body image, and something's happening there. And I did some research for another project which feels relevant, because they were doing some focus groups, and people were actually saying, well, like all the kind of gyms and adverts and marketing, it feels scary because it's all these glistening bodies with six packs and don't feel like I belong here. And I'm starting to see similar things coming out in here as well. So if you're feeling really conscious of your body image and things like that, you're lacking the confidence. And then all these kind of classes are being advertised, you know, you can have a rippling six pack. It's not really what they want to. They want to find people that are similar to them.
So, I mean, do you think there could be some advertising with some quite unfit people? Would that be a better, you know, like if you had an advert go to the gym and there were some people that weren't that fit, maybe Rick could do a visualization of that, like a gym ad. What would that look like, Rick? That's a challenge for you. Would that be, I mean, but what I'm going to also pick up on is this kind of vicious circle, and where gyms have been closed and people have been stuck at home, will more people be trapped in that vortex of confidence, meaning lack of motivation? Let's get some other people that are on this chat saying what they think. Anything from any of the other people here? Do you feel like you're stuck in this vicious circle? Do you get a bit annoyed about gym adverts with like super unbelievably fit people kind of pumping huge weights or just looking good, basically, not really breaking into a sweat? And would you like to see like a different kind of advert? Because to me, that's what that suggests. Come on, let's have a chat from some of you people here.
Sorry, it's Mark from Active Lancashire. Just not necessarily on the gym adverts, but on the social side of things again. Just a quick one, which I've picked up on certainly is a lot of people, you know, group active pre-lockdown. A lot of people did like group activity, real social. So there was social events social connections wrapped up in sort of physical events, or things like social football, going around for kick around with your mates, which is probably the only chance you've got to see your mates during a busy week. And when lockdown happened, and this is the flip side to the gym bunnies, you know, the people who go to the gym regularly. People who go to the gym regularly doing it to be fit. People who go and play social football are going to be social. And when lockdown happened, there's a lot of feedback we've had is those people who are doing it for social reasons didn't pick up any activity after that because they didn't do it for the physical activity element of it, they did it for the social. Whereas those who had gym memberships, they would find alternatives through home gym, running, cycling and things like that. So one of the biggest things we've kind of seen is those who were doing it for the social element of it were the biggest hit by lower levels of activity. So it's just to reaffirm that some of the comments made there around connections and the socialising, I think that is the absolute key around getting people to be active is wrapping up physical activity in social events.
Yeah,
that can't be underestimated.
So you're also on this kind of social side. I mean, will people with a very low the low confidence that Adam's talking about, will they be happy to get involved in social activities if it involves too much activity? I mean, one of the things we talked about last time was walking as a social, and it was mentioned, I think, this time as well. If people are feeling like they're not part of that group, will they come and get involved in these social activities?
I'm probably more thinking of those who have dropped, you know, in terms of activity levels have dropped. It's just an example. We've done some work with creative football. Where social football supporting mental well-being of blokes and lasses in Blackburn and other areas. And their biggest feedback was, and these are people who are vulnerable, living alone, have you know, issues within life where they've had struggles, and they just said that's been their biggest issue. It took them a lot of guts and a lot of confidence building to actually take that first step to get there. But the way that offer or that football session was presented and sold to him was literally come down, have a kick around. It's really informal. We just want to have a laugh, have a chat with people. It's the way that they probably marketed that even though they didn't market it, they just sold it. There's a real passionate bunch of people who set something up, and it probably took a bit of confidence for people to jump and attend it. But once that stopped, they just literally were sat there at home doing nothing, having negative experiences again, really. So they didn't have that necessarily that motivational confidence to do something on their own terms. They were almost waiting for creative football to start up again, really.
I mean, I can totally relate to that, being part of a football team, that, the football isn't just an excuse to go to the pub afterwards. And then that did turn into a kind of weekly Zoom chat. And I was worried that I was kind of lacking fitness, not doing the football. But then when I saw everybody else on the Zoom chat, I realized that I'm going to be the fittest person when everybody comes back. Anyway, but that's another story. So I'm not that worried about coming back. I know that I'm going to be really unfit, but everyone else is going to be even worse because they've really been overdoing it. Anyway, so where do we want to go? Because I feel like, what we said at the very beginning, there's kind of two sides to this that Adam kind of like picked out, of the people that maybe, and as you said, Mark, as well, that have kind of let it slip, let's say, and then the people that were never in it in the first place, and they're sort of on the other side of this hill, so to speak. So, I think it is two different groups. What do we want to talk about? Do we want to talk about the people that, that, as Mark said, have had the guts and that have really had to push themselves to join some kind of social group and get involved in something? Or do we talk about those people that have yet to do that? Which way do we want to go with this? What do we want to talk about here? And who's more important in a way? Where do we want to take this?
I guess from the, thinking about the Together and Active project and this sort of strapline that we've got, which is like from nothing to something. I mean, that's the biggest hurdle, isn't it, to get from that, whether it's, something that comes and goes. I mean, it's interesting when you've got projects like, Mark's talking about creative football, these other things where you need to put that time and energy into supporting and nurturing people to be able to take that first step. And I think one of the challenges, I think, that Together and Active Pendle or Together and Active Futures or Sport England is trying to explore is about how we can kind of tackle the levels of health even more. But there's a scalability to it, isn't it? How many projects can you fund at one level that might work with a certain number of people, when actually to tackle a problem, it's got to be huge. So there's got to be something, we've got to try and crack something in between, haven't we, to try and support. Because I know, just, Amy being a social prescriber, there's only so many people that Amy can work with in one go. It's like how much can we do within that kind of very supportive environment? Or what is the trick that we can find that will help make it happen? And I don't know what the answer is to that, but I think that is a real tension where you want to see some impact on health levels across all our towns,
Amy, have you got a response to that?
I was just going to say, really, because there's four of us social prescribers that work in Pendle. We do have volunteers that we do quite often, like buddy people up with someone to go to activities, including sort of getting things that would get them active until they feel comfortable in doing that. It would be really good to have more sort of supportive groups to sort of feed people into, because there's a lot of people that kind of need that hand holding, really, because they're not confident. And just to be able to perhaps have groups where there's someone that people that can buddy up with people who are less confident, and perhaps, give them a ring beforehand, and are you coming today to the group, and things like that. I think there's a lot of people that need that sort of support.
I mean, who will those kind of buddies be? Would it be people that have been through the program already? Would it be volunteers?
I think a combination. I mean, I think the Couch to 5K is really good for that, actually. I was going to say I've done that in the past. I've done part of that in the past. And and I know they are really good. It's Trodden Athletic Club, isn't it? That do run that, and the volunteers that they have within that are really supportive. So just more stuff like that people can get involved in.
Yeah, but it involves quite a lot of effort and a lot of persuasion and relationship building, I guess is what you're talking about, isn't it?
Yeah, it does.
Yeah. Paul, before I come to you, let me just come to Chris.
Yeah, it's quite an interesting one, just to kind of maybe even put back to Amy on that, in regards to your motivation to start that Couch to 5K with Trodden Athletic Club. There's potentially a perception of people who aren't engaged with physical activity. They may think, I can't go to Trodden Athletic Club. That's where that's a running group. It's where your elite people like Paul go. So all your major runners, that's where they go. That's not where I go. So what was it that kind of almost like that motivated you to think, I tell you what, I'll go and actually give it a go in the first place?
Yeah, I mean, does it almost put people off? Go on, sorry, Amy, go on.
Well, just my motivation is just for general health and well-being and to lose weight, really, for exercise. I think something like Couch to 5K could be off-putting for people that really lack confidence and have been out of doing anything for a long time. So there's perhaps things before that. I think walking's a really good thing to build people's activity level up a little bit before they get to that point. And I know we have walking groups in Pendle, and perhaps just a gradual sort of build up, and to build up relationships and to build people's confidence.
It strikes me it's a little bit like karaoke when whenever a karaoke thing comes in, it's the singer that runs it is normally really, really good, and that puts people off. But as soon as someone like me comes on and has a go, everyone goes, I can do better than that. And you get a flood of people coming forward. So I don't know. Paul, are you a member of Trodden Athletic Club?
I am, yeah. And I'm kind of, I guess, I'm definitely not in the elite, Chris. But I think for me, I mentioned this last time we had the discussion. I mean, I've always been fairly physically active, and it's kind of, I guess it's come through family. I played a lot of football, cricket, all that sort of stuff. Got into youth work, and then had to go at climbing, mountain biking, all that sort of things like that. So I've always been active, but then there was a point in my life where suddenly either work took over or whatever, and I started to feel a bit crap about it. And for me, the motivation was to start to feel better, and I couldn't afford really to go to a gym or anything like that. So the cheapest thing was buying a pair of trainers, and I bought some cheap trainers. I already had some shorts, and I could just literally get out of the door, and I just battled through a kind of feeling, kind of building up the fitness and feeling crap initially. But I think Trodden's an interesting club. I mean, I've got connections through Trodden in the past, but I do think there's something about Trodden, like within the running community. I think Trodden does present itself as being this kind of family, sort of family club, and a club that's open to everybody, where some clubs do have an air of being for the elite or for competition. And I think that's just because there's a range of people that run it that are just very supportive and open. And I think there's probably lots to be learned about how a club can feel that open, with it. And I think they're a good example of that kind of stuff. And when you go to a meet or whatever it is, you'll have the range of everybody there, but there's no sense of feeling like you can't be as good as the rest, because there's something there for everybody really, which I think they do really well. So
it's a very sort of welcoming kind of.
It's that all abilities, family, all that sort of stuff that goes on, and they look at things for a whole. They do other activities for kids. They do it for families as well. I think it's kind of like, they just seem to have something that has that air of being welcome rather than being competitive, I guess.
Yeah. So in a way, it's just about getting to the club, really, isn't it? Lisa, you've had your hand up for a while.
I was just going to say, I talk to a lot of people looking to getting into volunteering, and we talk about all different sorts of things when we're having a conversation. And a lot of that is about them becoming more active. They want to volunteer to become more active. And we talk about things like gardening, walking.
Yeah.
It's about that very low level to start off with. I would never suggest to somebody, go swimming every day, go running every day. I want them to ease the way in. But a big thing that a lot of people come up to me about is the cost implications. Because it's not cheap to actually do a lot of the activities in a lot of the facilities. And I think that's a big barrier that we've got at the moment, especially in Pendle. Like I say, I'm talking to people and say, well, you know, I'll say, well, I go swimming every day. Well, how much does that cost you? It's like, well, I have a yearly membership, it's £300. But people then have got to find that, haven't they? So it's, I say, I've been pushing people towards those gentler activities, but the ones that still they can get a sweat upon, and they're free. You know, and we're actively talking about setting gardening groups up and things like that, so people can give back to the community. But I think it's quite important to realise that a lot of the people we're aiming to get more active might have an issue with actually paying for a pair of running shoes even.
Yeah.
You know, I think we should never forget that.
Could Sport England be like, you know, providing people with running shoes to stop, to kind of lower that barrier? Or could, you know, I don't know. Are there some activities which are just free anyway? So these are some really good questions. Shabazz, you got your hand up?
Hi, Mike. Sorry, I joined the conversation late, so I missed the first 5 to 10 minutes. Just catching up on things, listening in. I think where things take place has a big impact as well, because motivation is an issue for someone who's not doing anything, and then just suddenly to turn up at a gym is not going to happen, because you've got an image of what the gym is like. Similar at a sports club. Yeah. You might not go to Burnley Football Club in the community because you know there's a gym there. There's going to be people in athletic physiques, the latest sports gear, playing football, etc. So there's a walk and talk group in Nelson, and they start their walks from sometimes a pub, Thatch and Thistle, or a cafe. And I think people are probably more likely to be motivated to go to a cafe to start a walk or something like that, rather than turn up at a gym where they are very welcoming gyms, but obviously they want you to sign up to a 12-month contract or you know, a monthly rolling contract, which people, you know, if you're not doing anything, Mike, you're not going to sign up to something like that. Well, and sometimes people are pressured into doing that. So I joined the gym once about 7 years ago, and before that all my sports was social, so I played a lot of football, tennis, cricket, so I didn't really need to go to the gym. When that started dying down, I joined the gym and I went 7 times in 12 months. And I decided to cancel it. And there's people in that position and people who don't want to get into that position as well. Just on Sunday, we had a group doing Tai Chi in the local park, in Victoria Park, and they had to limit it to 30 people, but the year before they had over 100 people there on a Sunday in their regular clothing, just a pair of trainers, and you know, that motivation is there. People would get up to do that, and it's easier to maybe encourage someone to do something, take small steps like that, meet at a cafe, go for a walk, or, you know, go for a 10-minute jog, or just a stretch off, rather than saying, okay, we want people to get up and active. These are the sports centres in Cone, Pendle, etc. And you've got kind of an image of the people that go in there, and if you don't fit that image, you probably feel unwelcome.
Well, Rick's already designed this poster behind me. If you can just disappear me for, there we go. Would that be a better poster to get people into the gym? Would it be less intimidating?
I thought that was Rick.
that's you're lucky that he's down here. He'd get a bit upset with that one. But anyway, so that's not a selfie from Rick. That's you know, okay, so there's a lot of things here. I'm quite interested in this idea of Tai Chi. And what brings people into the park, you know, because it's also the same that Paul said, you know, once you get to Chordon Club or Chordon Athletics Club, you are kind of there, but what brings you to and what brings you to the park, what brings you to the gardening and to the swimming pool. Mark, you got your hand up, so let me come to you.
Yeah, I mean, just following on from what Shabazz said, which is great, all them real local community-based activities that are starting from a pub or from a cafe or something, and it's part of the ingredients that are going to make this. They're run by people who are trusted, have really good relationships with the local people, are well respected. So that's a massive part of the mix. And you've just mentioned Trawden Athletics Club, but it sounds like they're running the same way, where they just really care about people and show that they care, and that is a massive part of the jigsaw puzzle that we're putting together as well. All these gyms, they can be quite, warm and welcoming right before you sign up, but the real impact you get is someone who will put their arm around you, give you a bit of love almost. That's the way it works, and that's why people come back, because they trust people, they have that relationship with people. So that I'm guessing that Tai Chi, there'll be someone who was a brilliant local community person who has helped set that up. Then there'll be dozens of other local community champions who are bringing their friends along or just nudging their friends. That's how things roll and grow. And that's I think, real key to this in terms of what we can do in Pendle as well. I mean, just building a really trusted, great relationships in the community.
Yeah, I mean, I know for a fact that some of the people in this call would fit into that bracket of, really active people in the community. Is there anything that would enable those people to be more effective? Are they kind of doing their best anyway? And as we've already said, it's can be quite an intensive thing to bring people through from, to make those first steps. So that would be my question out to everybody. Can we empower those people in the community that are doing these things, that are bringing people to the Tai Chi? Shabazz, let me come back to you.
I just want to add to that. Yeah, what you were saying about the community champions. This year we had planned 2 events. One was the Talking Society, which would have been a walking talking society.
Oh yeah, nice.
The attraction would have been that we were going to team up with the Pendle Walk and Talk, and the attraction there is conversation, not the walk itself. So people that normally come to talking societies to talk would get the chance to walk with each other and talk as well. And we had the Pendle Walking Festival, and we were meeting the council there, and we were going to run one of the walks as part of the talking society there as well, knowing that obviously to get people physically active will help the mental health as well. So it's not just conversation that people need, some kind of physical activity, and your overall health, mental, physical, spiritual, we feel it's all linked. So give someone the platform to do one of them things. Pendle Walk and Talk would have been there, so if they wanted to continue the walking, it would have been an avenue, a step in to something like that. But it's something definitely that's on our agenda, basically to do something outdoors in the way that it's going to get people physically active and talking to people and mixing with people from different backgrounds as well. So it's definitely something that's needed, and I think community organisations like Paul, CVS are key to this, that what activities or things that they have planned, if there's some kind of physical activity involved, it would definitely, because some of the people that we attract are probably not gym goers. They are probably people like, myself, who's going to be on Zoom or who will go to a Tokyo, but may not go to a football club.
I mean, could this session itself be done as a kind of walk and talk? I mean, I'm here sitting in the studio, but we could all be on our, and I know most people look to be on laptops rather than phones, apart from you, Shabazz.
Yeah,
but could we could all be like on headphones walking around? Would that work? Would that change the kind of texture of the conversation if we were all walking? We wouldn't. And how would we do what's this? This is like, this is being held back by money, is it, Rick? But in this case, it's actually a kind of it seems to be aiding this person's fitness, being held back by that money. But that's an interesting, interpretation of that, and where does money come into it? But that's one thing. But I just want to focus now on what Shabazz is saying and about, these events, the idea of walking, the social element. Chris, you've unmuted yourself. Is that because you're preparing to say something, or is that just accidental?
No, I think it's a great point. I think Shabazz, right, those ones that, as we're seeing that as being held back by money, if you look at money as a resource and what we have available, I think we've found one of the greatest elements of what we're doing here in Pendle hasn't necessarily been on an element of delivery. It is about the conversation. And this right now, and some of the meetings which we've had out in the community, some of the best things that we've found have literally been through utilising the resource of time and just appreciating actually that we almost live in a world where everything's rushed, everything has to be quick, we want snippets of information. But when we afford that luxury of just being able to speak to people, we may even get an hour, maybe 2 hours worth of conversation, and something may come up which is only 2 minutes of that, which is something we can then action on, or we can really see as a real nugget of gold really out of that entire conversation. But that may never have come about if we didn't give that luxury of having a really in-depth, thought-provoking conversation. And even with the walking meetings, I know, Mark, we had one yesterday, didn't we, over the phone, where we had a meeting, just called each other but went out for a walk.
Yeah, that's a really nice idea. I mean, I hadn't really thought of that until now. You know, what is it, 4 or 5 months into lockdown? We don't need to be in one place with this new digital technology. We can be meeting on the move.
And yeah, that's a good point. Is that's what me and Amy, we've actually booked in a meeting on Friday, and we're going to actually go for a socially distanced walk, but have it as our meeting on Friday around Lomache Industrial Estate and the nature reserve that's hidden there as well. So that's how we're trying to change this whole mindset of your meeting doesn't have to be in 4 walls, sat down around a table. We can be outside, fresh air, exploring nature.
Yeah, or exploring the local cafes and pubs as well.
Yeah, I was just going to say, are you going to bring some cake to motivate me, Chris?
You just put your order in now, Amy.
Yeah, so I saw you put in the chat, Amy, about the cake as a motivating factor. And I guess we could talk about that as a kind of rewards. And I think Paul's put, you know, it might be cake, it might be pub. But the reward element is, you know, in a way, just as important as the kind of, as the sort of stepping onto the forecourt, as the car salesman would say. It's also about that reward and that boost. Paul.
Yeah, I just wanted to bring a couple of comments they've come through Facebook actually. So one, just on that kind of, I guess, more social aspect, Andrew's talked a bit about, he's on hold at the moment, but the whole thing around Crown Green bowling as well, which is kind of changing its ideas about kind of being much more fun and inclusive and family focused really, and it's kind of a little bit more chilled, a little bit more laid back. But there's local clubs there that he's involved in that'd be interested. And another one that's kind of slightly different tangent, but Jill's put in about she's tried to download the NHS Health app, but it refused her because she was within the correct BMI. So unless you're a certain size, you can't even get on the app. But maybe that needs to be more inclusive, just for people generally to be fit, whether you should be doing it or not, or perception of it or not. But anyway, that's just something slightly random.
Well, that's 2 really good points, especially when considering the social nature that we've been talking about. Then if you're going to have a kind of fitness app, then everyone should be able to get on it for sure. Where do we want to go with this? I mean, talking about this, you know, I think there was a really good point from Chris about the value of like putting in the time and having the big conversation to get the insights out, which might take a bit of time. Is it about kind of having more time and resources to throw at this, or more giving people more time to have these longer conversations, or more kind of like intimate conversations in a way? Speaking of, there's a few people that haven't said anything yet. You know, I don't want to force anyone to kind of get involved, but you know, maybe if you don't want to say it on the mic, you can always put it into the chat as well. Tell us what you're thinking. Are we going down the right avenue here? I mean, to me, it seems to be that where we're going here is this, like the value of building relationships. But is it, in terms of a project like this, is it really possible to actually, number one, find those people, and then number 2, create these relationships will actually get them more active? Because that seems to be the way we're going with this conversation. What do you think? Well, okay, another question. Has anybody done that with anybody? Have you actually built up a relationship and got somebody more active?
I have, Mike, yeah.
Yeah.
So from my perspective, I think through lockdown, what we've actually realised is that given an element of control back in my day and how much time I actually have as a resource to, rather than having to commute for an hour and a bit.
Yeah.
So now we're where I've actually been able to say with my dad, let's go for a walk. He's on a larger size. Probably it could do to lose. I think he would admit it as well, a few pounds here and there. But we just basically, he can't do much running anymore. He's done a little bit of cycling. So we've kind of just integrated having that element of walk, just going for a walk and actually just having a conversation. As we've been doing it, a little bit like the walk and talk, but that's just something that I've been able to do with a bit more flexibility actually from lockdown and working at home.
Yeah.
That's been a real positive thing, which again, even being able to get out on my bike exactly at 5 o'clock and going for a ride for just to clear my head after a day's work has been really good. So that's something which has been a positive. One thing I can take as a positive from lockdown and COVID.
So yeah, I mean, we're a bit more flexible with our time now. We've maybe got a bit more time. Has other people done that? Have they got a similar story? Maybe it's a relative. I've said my parents, they're more active than I am, so I can't really, you know, if anything, they'd be encouraging me to get a bit more active. Anyone else got a story like that where they've managed to persuade somebody to get a bit more active? Is it just the one? Yeah. Okay. Adam, let me come to you.
It's not a story, but it's just an observation. We've probably not picked up on it, but I think there's something around like the sheer noise online. Like it's even finding these groups and these activities. So even like, I completely agree with a lot of the conversations we've been having where it's more about the people and the activities, but how do you even find and come across those activities and those people and the things that are doing it? Because the online world is changing so much. Like, how do you find it in the noise of Facebook and adverts and things like that? That's where I've always really struggled. Is even if I kind of know what I want to find, I just don't know what's out there. And sometimes you're not as connected with your local communities as you'd like to be.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I think there's something around that I don't have the answer to it. But I think that can be a barrier for quite a few people.
I mean, it's difficult times as well now. You know, like normally we would be out on the street and we would literally be calling people into this conversation saying, come on, you know, why are you not joining in this group? And that's a lot easier to invoke that kind of sense of being part of something. But online, you know, even stepping into this conversation, I think it's quite hard to step into a digital conversation. So stepping into a digital club or even a physical club, but, you know, the website is online and that's the way you find out what's going on. I think is a tricky one. Amy?
I'm just going to say, I think that's a really good point, actually. I don't think it's easy to find out what there is out there, even if you are online. A lot of people that come to me aren't online, and there's a high proportion of people, particularly I work in Pendle West, so particularly in that area, a lot of people that for one reason or another don't have any digital skills, and everything is online now, so it's really difficult that's part of our job, is to connect those people into things.
Yeah,
it's difficult at the moment. We're doing we're meeting up with people, and like Chris has said, you know, trying to, rather than just talk on the phone, try and get out and get people we'll meet and we'll go for a walk. But there's very little to get people connected into. I think the Tai Chi in the park is really good. I know it's for limited amounts of people this year, but I think we need to do more things like that. We've got some really nice parks in Pendle.
Yeah.
And to get more stuff going on there. And to get people to know about it. Yeah.
Darren.
Yeah, just to introduce myself, I'm from Active Lancashire, work with Mark. Just a couple of observations, really. I mean, I think it's about there's been lots of sort of really creative ways that people have got active. Lots of references to outdoor use and parks. And I think there's just almost like a bit of an understanding on how we plan ahead. You know, there's lots of rumours and talk of a spike before Christmas and another potential lockdown period. It's looking at what we could do in the future when the weather's perhaps not as good as it has been the last few weeks or few months, and you know what is available. I mean, I'm personally not really sort of bought into the digital stuff, in the digital learning or the digital workouts, etc. I'm not really sort of bought into it, but I'm more of an outdoor person, a gym type person. So again, it's just looking at different people's needs and what potentially moving forward they can access.
I mean, to be honest, I'm not bought into the digital thing either. However, you know, what have we got right now? Do you know what I mean? It's like, is there a different way to get things happening in these times when, you know, we're semi-locked down? Is there a different way of doing that that doesn't involve digital? Because we do alienate a lot of people. You know, like when we normally do these Talking Society things or the Talkioki at large, there's a much wider demographic. There's younger people, there's older people. There's all sorts of different people that come involved in it that are excluded because we've gone online. But my question is there a different way of doing it? And I just want to, as well, just while I'm noticing, we talked about doing this kind of walking meeting. Leah's seems to be walking around the house, doing a little bit of extra walking as we're talking. These are all questions. Shabazz, you got your hand up. Is it to answer that question or is it to make a different point? Never is, never is.
Sorry, it was just going back a few points. Parks, about the parks. Pendle's got so many beautiful parks. We run a cafe in Victoria Park, and that has been since the lockdown as busier than it's ever been. And you've got elderly couples going for walks, you've got families going for walks, and you've got young people on bikes. But these are things that obviously people are being creative and probably doing things that they've not done, but there's nothing organized for them. So this is happening during the lockdown. Hopefully one thing will go back to normal. Personally, I think that the usage of the park will go down as there's nothing organized within the park. So even from like a local authority or organizational point of view throughout Pendle and Lancashire, I don't think the spaces are used and utilized as much as they should be. And outdoor spaces, I think if you make something like exercise the second, the least important thing in getting people there, I think you'd probably be able to attract more people. But things happening like we've got some garden beds we put in. We want the community groups to sponsor them and maintain them, and that would get people out talking and have some physical exercise as well. But obviously it's have to be put on hold with the lockdown as well. So we were looking at getting different people into the park through different avenues. But I think definitely as an authority, as a borough in Pendle, we need to look at utilising the parks more than they are being used at the moment.
I mean, if it was just kind of expected that there was stuff happening in the park, would that kind of almost, you know, almost suck people into activity? If there was like, you know, like we talked about Tai Chi in the park, other activities, if there was just always something happening in the park, would that be a way to bring people in just because there'd always be something going on? I mean, Darren, I feel that you feel that those kind of park elements are something that is really underused, that, you know, that could be a potential draw, and it's a non-digital thing.
I'd say so. I mean, there's obviously some great parks in Pendle. I think the other thing as well, a lot of people maybe that are looking at events and stuff like that, you know, the fundraising type activities where people, you know, sign up to raise funding for charity. A lot of those events have now gone. Charities are obviously crying out for funding and events. So it's how we could be creative. There's lots of virtual type events popping up. Just looking at different ways that we can utilise what we've got and who we've got, really.
But I mean, can you do stuff in a safe way that's still non-digital, you know, like COVID safe, but actually doesn't involve digital, because as you were saying before, I think a lot of people are turned off from this digital side, or are not, it's just not part of their world.
Yeah, it's a good golden question, isn't it?
Yeah. Well,
what else is there?
I mean, I guess we're here to ask the big questions. Leah, did you want to say something? You've just demonstrated a little bit of getting active whilst being on the meeting, and that, you know, other people can do that as well. Did you want to chime in at this point? What do you think of the discussion so far?
Yeah, sorry if I made you dizzy walking around. I was trying to find my earphones and I found I'd left them right next to where I originally were.
Yeah. Well, you did some exercise in the. Maybe we could just lose everybody's phone. That would be the best way to get people active.
Yeah, I just walk up and downstairs 3 or 4 times. I work for Together and Active Future with Chris and Mark, and I'm probably not the best advocate for being physically active. I've never been confident enough to go into a gym, and I'm not sociable enough to go into a group in a park with people who I don't know. So for me, for being physically active, it's either with my partner or with my dad, and I have to have my dog involved. I have to have an animal with me, or else I don't feel confident just to go on a walk on my own. I have to have someone there with me.
Does it have to be a dog, or could it be another animal?
Normally a dog. It has to be a dog. And or with a friend. I can't just go out on a walk on my own. And we have a couple of team calls a couple of times a week just to check in with each other. And as long as somebody's home with me, I will go on a walk. If not, I'll just stay inside most of the time. And part of my physical activity has massively dropped with being at home all the time. Because I'd usually, when I was in the office, I'd walk down to my dad's, which is 5 minutes away, and I'd go play with the dogs for half an hour and walk back to the office. And I don't get that with being at home. So my physical activity has significantly dropped. And part of it is being in the house on my own all day. You don't get the social element. So when my partner comes home from work, I can't be bothered doing anything because I've been sat down all day. You lose the motivation and get a bit lazy. And I'll admit that I have become more lazy because I've lost the motivation with being in all the time.
I mean, so many things there. I mean, the dog thing or the other animals. I really need a dog sound effect. I've only really got the cat. But, you know, there's cat people and dog people. The whole dog thing, which we've not explored at all, or other animals are available. That's kind of interesting, but also the kind of, you know, the social factor and the social barrier, I think, is a really interesting thing. And it just goes to show, you know, what a challenge that is to bring people into activities, or could we design activities which are more with known people? So there's so many things there. And there was another thing, but I've forgotten it now. But anyway, Lisa's got her hand up, so I don't have to remember it now. But over to you, Lisa.
Yeah, the dog walking one's quite an interesting one. Over lockdown, we were finding volunteers for the hubs, and dog walk. Amy's laughing now because dog walking was a massive thing that people who were in their homes and couldn't leave needed the dogs walking. And I think I've got 3 or 4 adverts out for dog walkers in Pendle because, you know, people needed the dogs walking. However, it was really interesting that not many people responded to it. So I don't know if it's because people were that caught up in their own world that they didn't want to go and help somebody else to walk the dogs, or people who might have gone shopping and done some sort of activity like that. Somebody didn't necessarily want to be involved with a dog. I don't know, but dog walking was quite a big issue over lockdown. That we needed to get people in who could help people who couldn't go out and walk the dogs. However, on the flip side of that, we found volunteers who were still walking the dogs to the people who are now going together for walks. And so it has become a social event as well. So people who might have just gone 5 minutes to walk their dog are now actually travelling to the other person, and they're going out on longer walks. So I think dog walking is quite a good one to think about when it comes to activity. But maybe not just have people who walk dogs, but introduce it sort of a walking group where you could bring your own dog if you wanted, or if you don't want, it's all right. You know, it seems to be a dog needing a walk is something that's a motivator in itself.
Yeah, in a way, we talked earlier on about peer pressure, but there's also dog pressure from the dog that wants to go on a walk. And is that, in a way, or, you know, or possibly, I guess it could be children that need to get out and about as well. But what do people think about this? I mean, where do we want to go with this conversation? Do we want to talk about this dog element that we've not really touched on before? I don't know if Rick will do a dog visualization because he doesn't really like dogs, to be honest. But we, you know, do we want to talk about this? Leah, you got your hand up again?
Yeah, just sorry, Mark. I know he's sick of dog talk this week from our team calls. It's just from my perspective, if I were to go on a walk on my own, I don't have the motivation. If it's just for me, I'm like, I'll have a cup of tea. But if it's for my dog, or a phone call from my dad saying, I'm bringing the dogs up to the nature reserve behind your house, we're going on a walk, I will do it, because one, someone's dragging me out of the house and I get to see my other dogs. Or it's a thought of that dog wanting to go out and he wants me to take him, and I'll only do it if it's for something else. I won't do it for myself. And that's a barrier for me personally that I know I need to tackle, but I don't know how to overcome that barrier unless it's, well, my dad's getting me, or my partner, or my dogs. I can't do it just for me. But and I still haven't found that physical activity that motivates me, that I want to do it. And I'm struggling with that in lockdown, because I don't know when I'm going back to the office. So is it another 4, 5, 6 a year, months, until I'm going to find that thing outside?
Yeah, I mean, this is two ways we can go with this. We can carry on talking about the dogs, but also that sort of sense of duty that you've got to the dog, that you feel a responsibility. And it kind of comes back to that first point that I was putting to Adam about almost like like the social thing, maybe why it didn't come out in the survey is because it's not a kind of positive thing. It's a negative thing that you feel bad if you don't take the dog out, or you feel bad if you let down your friends that you said you were going to go out for a walk with them or go and play football with them. So there's that. We could go down that road. We could talk about this thing like the other thing you said, that you haven't found your sense of motivation outside of the dog thing. It's kind of up to us where we want to take this conversation. Amy, you've got your hand up.
I was just going to do a quick point on the dog thing, because it is interesting, because there's a lot of people, because of mobility issues and things, that have dogs but struggle to walk them. I know of a group that I mentioned to Chris over in Hyndburn, where it's sort of a walking group, but it's very inclusive for everybody. So people might go who have dogs and I suppose can't walk, somebody else might walk the dog if they can't walk further. There might be people that can go, that are in wheelchairs, people with push chairs with children. So and they sort of all help each other in that sense. And I think that's sort of a really good model, if you will, because people could go along with, people might want to walk a dog, but they don't necessarily have one. But there's going to be a walk where there's dogs there, and that can be a motivator for people. That's all I was going to say.
Okay. So the dog thing is definitely a kind of glue. What do other people think about this? We're still on the dog thing. Shabazz, have you got any view on dogs?
I don't have a dog,
No.
but I do have a child who goes to the park twice a day with her mum.
Yeah, so
similar things. Obviously, once in the morning, once in the afternoon, she goes for a walk. A lot of our dog walkers that we see at the park come twice a day as well. So they'll come in the morning and they'll come later on in the afternoon as well. It's a thing where it gets you out of the house. So you need an excuse. You need a reason, and that thing for some people it might be a dog. During lockdown, some people it's children. But we that's what we need to kind of identify is what would get people out of the house. Is it a dog? Is it a child? Or is it some family activities? Can you exercise as a family?
Yeah, I mean, in my business, they say never work with children and animals, but it seems like we may well have to do this to get people out of the house.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah. I mean, and is it this kind of? I guess what I'm coming from with this, but no one seems to be necessarily picking up on this. Is it kind of almost a sense of duty rather than a sense of like, oh, it's going to be fun or I'm going to get something out of it? It's more like the dog's going to get something out of it or the child's going to get something out of it that brings you into this conversation. Paul?
Yeah, I mean, some of the bits that I picked up from the surveys are actually the things that are motivating people are those kind of other elements of the responsibility bit, really, that actually you've got to be healthy because of your family or your children, or I guess, or, you know, you've got to be able to take your dog out and look after it, really. So it is quite an interesting motivator. And I'm a little bit like, in some respects, that we've got a dog and I do like walking the dog, but actually it's the dog that needs the walk is the thing that gets me out, and it gets me out at different points in the day as well. I wouldn't normally do something, and that can be just a short, you know, it could be an hour walk or a 15-minute walk. So I do think that sense of responsibility for others is something that can help you if you're in that position, really. Yeah.
I mean, for me, my dad's got a dog, and it's more like this idea that my dad doesn't take the dog for enough walks. So it's almost like a self-righteous thing. It's like, I'm going to take the dog for a walk because you're not, do you know what I mean? So it's a weird thing. It's not like, oh, and then I'm definitely not doing it for the thinking about my own fitness. I'm just thinking about it for the sake of this dog. I don't know. Maybe, go on.
I was just going to say, it makes me think about, cause the thing that buddying thing's been mentioned, Lisa's mentioned the fact that people have needed their dogs walking who were shielding and couldn't go out. And I mean, I've not necessarily seen those things, but it does make you think again from a responsibility. Is that just that little thing that you can offer to others as well, which gets you out and about doing something. So there's kind of another way of thinking about it like that. And I wonder how easy it is for people to find out about those opportunities, but also how easy is it that people can just do that? You know, what are the systems? Because sometimes I think we can put systems in place that make it really difficult. Like even becoming a volunteer, you usually have to fill in quite a bit of paperwork. You have to have your checks done and all that. And we know that's all important, but actually for some people, you know, that can be a barrier as well, where they want to just kind of quite easily help someone or just, you know, take a dog out or whatever.
I mean, that's a really interesting point. I mean, I think we'd have to go back to you, Lisa, and find out, because you were saying the dog walking, almost volunteering for dog walking didn't get that much kind of pickup.
Well, we probably had about 20 people dog walking over 3 areas. So we did have a lot of people, we just didn't have enough. There was a big demand for it, but everyone who volunteered for it, we did have to put paperwork in place because some of the dogs were very expensive dogs. We had to make sure that we're safeguarding people against, you know, do they understand that this dog's quite will pull on the lead, could bite, all of those things. So there was lots that had to be put in place, but a lot of the people who were volunteering for it were doggy people who understood that, and we're actually quite glad that we'd done that we were thinking about those things. So it turned out to be quite positive. I do agree with Paul, when it comes to volunteering, we do have to put a lot of things in place in order to sign up a volunteer. A lot of it does come from your funders and from your insurance. But a lot of that, I always feel, should make somebody feel safe, that you're actually thinking about all those things.
I mean, I think it's clear from this conversation that however we get people active, there's a lot of activity involved. There's a lot of effort they need to put in, whether it's having these long conversations to find out what makes people tick, or whether it's kind of doing all this paperwork to get people volunteering or doing their dogs. But I'm kind of interested in this kind of idea of a kind of a motivation, not to help yourself, but to help others. Is that a kind of motivation that would actually bring a different group of people out of the house or doing exercise? You know, would your dog scheme, given more resources, would it have a bigger take up, and would it start to bring in people that are not necessarily active and other ways of volunteering in the community? I mean, certainly round our way, we've seen like a huge surge in volunteering over,
But I was going to say, I think the figures that we had, I spoke to over 1,000 people about volunteering in 2.5 months. I had 300 active volunteers. I think COVID-19 really did bring out that community spirit and that want to actually help others. We had a lot of people who've carried on who had never thought about volunteering previously, and actually getting out there and doing things. And of course, they're very active then. You know, they might have been going shopping for somebody, but at least they're out there, they're walking, they're doing it. So I think it has brought a lot of people forwards who necessarily would have just been sat in the house otherwise.
But are they the kind of people that wouldn't have been active before, or are they the same active? Because we talked about this divide. We sort of started off this whole chat talking about the divide between the people that were maybe motivated but had wound down a little bit through lockdown, and those who couldn't get the confidence. I mean, which side are these people coming from?
I think the biggest issue you have there is a lot of the people who wouldn't have been active previously were having to shield. So they weren't going out anyway. So we had a lot of volunteers who probably weren't that active. They'd go to work, come home, do nothing else, and now they're doing other things. But I think a lot of the people maybe were wanting to target haven't been going out because they shouldn't have been going out.
Right. Okay. So there's still a lot of these things have got very complicated now in terms of like who's shielding, the ups and downs of the pandemic, you know, the hotspots and the rest of it. But just in terms of the principle, I think there is still a principle there that maybe helping other people or getting involved with things for the sake of other people or animals could potentially be a way to get a different group of people active. Or I mean, what do people think about that? Is that a possibility? And what's this visual we've got here, Rick? This is. I'm going to have to just have a bigger look at this. What's this about? This is somebody looking in a cupboard. I don't get this one, Rick. What is this? It's what? Oh, it's the hidden motivation. I see, hidden motivation. Right, I get it. So this is all about, you know, finding the motivation. It's there somewhere. Oh, it's about losing the phone as well, maybe, as a motivation. Like you spend like 30 minutes turning your house upside down trying to find your headphones. Okay, so what we were talking about before that, we were talking about this idea of like helping others to actually. Would that be a motivation, or is that a non-starter? What do people think? Could it be something like a sort of, one of the things we've got down our way is this organization called Good Gym, which is like full of do-gooders that like get fit by helping other people. It seems to be an interesting model. And we actually did a little Zoom session with them a few weeks ago. Is that potentially a model where it's helping other people that gets you out and about? Shabazz.
I was just thinking when you said helping other people, and I was just thinking one of the questions was about spirituality and faith. And I was thinking that obviously there's a lot of getting different groups out. What about mosques and churches or even any faith organization, if they could have a faith or a church walking group? So it's helping other people from your church who probably normally don't get out to get out as well. And it's a different form of engagement. So you're not just sat there on a Sunday or a Friday at the mosque sitting and doing your praying. You can get out and meet these people. And it doesn't have to be labeled as a physical activity. It could just be get to know other people from the church by walking together or having something going on. But they have, especially churches and mosques, they have regular attendees who obviously are committed to that organization, and maybe an avenue is maybe speaking to some faith leaders to see if they could get involved and see if they could get their communities or congregations active.
I mean, just just from your perspective here, Shabazz, are you involved with the local mosque? Or?
I do go to the local mosque, but we've got our a group that I'm volunteering with is the Free Spiritual Centre, but it's younger people, and that's a mixture of hardcore gym people who go 3 to 4 times a week, and then someone like Ralph who never goes to the gym, and he's just love reading all the time. So it's a mixture. But we do an annual mountain climb to raise money for the Free Spiritual Centre. So we've done Snowdon, Helwell and Scaffell and Ben Nevis last year. We were planning on this year, obviously things have been put on hold, but just about 5 of us went on the weekend to Malham Cove, social distancing, and just to have a walk around there, for a catch up. But the catch up was done in the way that we had a walk and a picnic together.
What I'm thinking about though more is not so much the more active people in the mosque, but the less active people. Would like the call to actually help others be a kind of a strong motivating factor to get them active?
Yeah, I'm just thinking like you could have things some of these mosques and churches are big enough to have some form of physical activity take place inside. So you could have the lighthouse Tai Chi going into a mosque or a church and running a session there, where they might not be able to go outside and do something, but in the confines of the mosque or the church, they might be willing to take part in something there.
Okay,
that's kind of getting groups and organizations willing to go into the mosque and church to maybe run a session, or even training someone up there who could run a session and that's then taken on by the church or the mosque to run themselves. So you're kind of helping them establish some kind of physical activity between themselves.
A lot of ideas there and a lot of interesting possibilities. Amy, you had your hand up. I know you put it down now. Don't worry that we've gone off.
I sort of forgot. I lost my train. I think that's a really good point about the mosques and the churches, because I think the thing is somebody's got to, whatever it is that motivates people, somebody's got to take charge of that when you're talking about organising these things. So it's who the right people are to do that. There's a lot of community organisations at the moment that aren't able to run. So I think it's supporting them to be able to sort of diversify really, which is one thing that we do at CVS, is to help groups do that. And I know we have funding streams available, and obviously Together and Active Pendle has funding for these things. So it's trying to get that support into people out in the community to sort of it's going to be 6 months until we can open some indoor community groups. Let's think about what we can do now really, because I think people's mental health is deteriorating quite rapidly. We see that every day. So it's what can we do to remedy that?
I mean, there are so many problems at the moment, which makes, in a way, the whole drive of this project to get people active is more important than ever, but also more difficult than ever. So how to do it is really, I think this is why we really need to come up with these ideas. And my personal feeling is just to sort of like approach this psychology. How can we actually tap into people's psychology? There's a couple of hands up. Leah, I'm going to come to you, then to you, Lisa. What's your point?
I think another thing with barriers and trying to get inactive people active again is during this time is making everyone feel safe, whether it's doing it outdoor socially distanced or organised groups inside. It's making sure everyone feels safe as numbers are rising and local lockdowns around where we are, and numbers around Pendle. Personally, even though I'm not in a high risk group, I don't always feel the safest going out, even to a supermarket, whether I have gloves and masks and antibacterial, and I still wear the same shoes just to go in and out of the house, the coat and everything. And I still don't feel fully safe just going to the supermarket to do my weekly shop, and that's an essential thing. So if going to do a physical activity, even though it is essential for mental well-being and keeping yourself physically active, it's making yourself feel safe when you do that, when it's not necessarily the priority on everybody's list. It's how do you make sure a person or anybody doing anything feels safe to do that?
That's a really good point. That's a really good point. And I mean, there's two things as well I'm going to draw from that point. One is the actual risk that you're exposing yourself to, but also that's that feeling of feeling unsafe, which is just as important in a way as and a second barrier. Okay, let me come to Lisa. What's your point?
Well, just to go to what Leah was just saying, I have put it in the little group chat that recently when I've been supporting groups, I've never been more busy about sending out information on safeguarding, on risk assessments, on training people so that they've had safeguarding training, things like that. I've never been as busy. And I think a lot of the groups now are seeing it as a priority to make people feel safe. You know, so that when somebody asks them a question, they can answer it and say, well, actually, we've done this mitigation, we've put this in place. But what I actually put my hand up to say was, one of my friends been really successful over in Blackpool. He put together just a page for people just to go and help pick the rubbish up off the beach. And he just said, if you turn up, I will give you a bag, I'll give you a little picker, but you can do it on your own. And then, you know, that's it. You can keep your picker, you can carry on doing it. And he said people are coming back week after week after week to do it. There's no pressure on them. They don't have to do it. You know, they can come once and get a free picker and a free bin bag if they want it. But he said it's just that idea that I'm just saying, here's the tools. Now you can go off and clean your own environment. Yeah. And it's that giving somebody the tool just to do something to make that difference for their own environment. I think it's really important. Yeah. And, you know, that could be incorporated in a walking group. That could be incorporated in actually on your way somewhere or while you're there, do it. But you've given that sort of almost a social identity to someone that, you know, they're doing something good for their area. They've made their area look more beautiful. It's something they can be really proud about. And it's very simple as that. It's a very tiny little simple thing. And again, I suppose it's like if somebody was dog walking, they wouldn't go without little bags, would they, to put the waste in. It's that sort of an idea that, you know, when we're doing these things, we need to make sure that we give people not just the motivation, but also the tools to do it.
I mean, absolutely. I mean, but I think that's an interesting thing where you're sort of almost putting the onus on the person to do something good for the, you know, their environment, whatever that is, whether it's their very local space or, you know, when it comes to a beach, they might be thinking more globally about all the plastic and all that kind of stuff. So are these motivations actually that strong motivation that will actually bring people to being active, getting people active? And, you know, maybe some sort of like some scandalous photographs of like rubbish up on Pendle Hill would get people walking up the hill to try and get rid of it. Or something like that, you know, or like, you know, I don't know, a trolley in the canal. I'm just thinking aloud here. While we're on this subject of almost like this kind of duty to do something different. Paul, you got your hand up.
Well, I would just, I mean, we've been thinking and talking about it a while. It's just whether there's another way of motivating, because a lot of people, I think, do seem to like the stuff on the phone that's telling them they're doing so many steps, all that sort of stuff. We've talked a bit about how you can visualize like the health of Pendle a bit more regularly. So that say, like we've talked about this, you know, with other partners around the canal and stuff like that. So if you're walking on the canal, doing so many steps, that there's a way that you can see something visually changing as you know, whether it's kind of like we talked about the gas, you know, the gasometer, for example, at Brayfield Mill, you know, that one idea we talked about this, if you can kind of have it rising and falling depending on how much activity people in Pendle are doing. So you can kind of have this.
Yeah, visualize it, yeah. So
the bit that you're doing is contributing to something, but you can see it going on. I mean, that's kind of like a large scale thing, but whether it could be through light or, you know, like these kind of the visualizations of, you know, heartbeats or just, you know, the numbers of people doing things, you know, if you could see it visually, like across a town or in a particular part, whether that's the thing that would get people wanting to motivate, you know, to that first step really. So I'm kind of interested in the idea how you visualize what everyone's doing as well.
That's a really nice idea, yeah. Amy, you got a point.
Yeah, just about that. It was just something that I've seen this week. They've just opened in Fleetwood something called the Wellbeing Way, which is based around the 5 ways to well-being. And I think it's a stretch of coastal path. And they're trying to encourage people to go to certain points and take pictures and share them on social media whilst doing this walk, which is kind of a similar thing, I think, to what you're sort of saying. Sort of a visual representation of people doing that activity, and a way of connecting with other people as well at the same time.
I guess also it's a kind of feedback as well, isn't it? And this feedback, it's not something we've really talked about, the feedback that you get from doing activity. I guess because we're just talking about getting to the point where we can give people feedback, but we, you know, also need to get people getting active in the first place. But that's a really interesting point. Could we somehow have something like that? Maybe it's something, Rick, you could visualize, although we are actually running out of time here. Could you visualize some kind of gasometer you're talking about? The gasometer in Briarfield are you talking about?
Yeah, we talked, because obviously we used to raise.
Yeah, could it kind of now become a kind of like, and what happens if you're almost like a sort of in a computer game, your sort of level, your energy level is up and then down. Although, Rick's Rick's on another visual. I probably don't have time to do that. Maybe we could send it off later on. I don't know. But anyway, we do need to get final thoughts actually, because I've just sort of lost track of time here, and we've actually lost a few people without getting their final thoughts. So maybe it's time now just to gather those final thoughts. I mean, just to recap on what we talked about, you know, we talked a lot about this idea of motivation and what drives people to be motivated. We talked a little bit about, you know, the two sides of this, the people that have kind of spiraled down because of the lockdown, but also people that have lacked in confidence and taking that first step and what's going to bring them to that first step. A few interesting conversations about, in a way, the power of conversation, the power of relationships, but then also that kind of feeling of duty and that feeling of helping either a person, an animal, or the environment, you know, or the society at whole, and the spiritual side of that as well. Can we somehow connect that better? So these are some of the things we talked about. Let's get some final thoughts. Anyone want to go first?
I mean, it's made me think about, I can't remember who brought it up, whether it was about, doing something for your family or whatever. It's made me think about, I know I've been talking to my dad quite a bit about making sure he's out, because he used to be ridiculously active when he was younger, and he's just got less and less really, and he basically spends his time watching soap operas. And we've often talked about, I'll come call around and we'll go for a walk, but I haven't really done it, and I kind of feel like that's something I've got to start doing really, is like a family personal responsibility to get my dad active. If he's watching on Facebook, Dad, you know, I'm coming round for a walk. So.
Yeah, that's you. We're coming to get you. I'm not actually, but maybe not this month anyway. But Paul's coming to get you. Okay, so that's a good point. We can all help those people we know the most. And you know, we heard from Chris about his dad, so maybe we can all kind of, you know, just think about those closest to us. Shabazz, final thought?
I was just thinking for the next meeting, let's do something outdoors, something digital, like we said, something that we can put on to social media so people can see this is a different way of talking and connecting to people. You can be outdoors whilst doing it.
We've talked the talk, but now we need to walk the walk.
Yes, exactly.
So someone's got to do it. Anyway, so yeah, I mean, can we do the next one totally mobile? Can everyone make, I mean, Leah sort of demonstrated it, maybe accidentally, by trying to find her headphones, but could we all be mobile for the next one? I don't know, that might present a challenge to you, Rick, but it's a challenge. We like challenges, don't we, Rick? The look on his face. But yeah, we could go outside. Maybe we could be on a tandem, and you could be on the back doing the visualization, and I could do the talking on the front. I don't know. Just a thought. Just a thought. Okay. Any other final thoughts, Chris?
Yeah, I think it's been again similar to Paul. A lot of thought-provoking things that have come out of the conversation today, such as accessibility, whether it is to our green spaces, whether it's utilising the people who are best placed in the locations, such as the Imans, or again, we've had a great conversation with the local school, which have got access to big green playing fields as well, in the heart of their neighbourhood. So is that something we can utilise, but also that agency of helping other people, that pass it on effect of trying to bring in somebody else into what we're trying to achieve, taking on that personal responsibility, but getting something back from supporting others. And then I think the last point about, which I'm again thinking in all different directions about, that incentivization. As much as we can intrinsically be motivated by helping others, is there anything that us as the system can do to again provide through either like gamification or incentivization of physical activity through things like rewards, prizes, because that's something we should definitely explore, again, just to support people.
Yeah. Okay, we've got Rick's has visualized very quickly, because I mean, it's amazingly how quick he's done it. You know, would it look like this kind of like energy meter for Pendle? Would it be something different? We want all of your ideas. Any other final thoughts from other people? Lisa?
Yeah, I think it's just important for us to be there now to support the groups who potentially could help us. So, and be aware that there is things like funding out there, there's help out there, that we can all help all these people who might not necessarily be able to be on social media and do this sort of thing, but might come to us and say, you know, is this available for me? That we're all aware of what each other are doing, and we can all work in these partnerships to actually push this forwards and make sure that people do have that opportunity to get active, you know, however they want to do it.
Yeah. So in a way, what I'm going to draw from that is this, you know, absolutely crucial element of this kind of cross-fertilization, that we need to know what each other's doing and signpost people to the possibilities where there is funding, and there is actually also a huge group of people that are wanting to do stuff as well. And I really like your point, this pass it on idea, that just putting that onus onto people to say we all need to start getting people active. Any other final thoughts? Okay, I'm going to hold it for what's going to seem like a lifetime. It's only a couple of seconds. Nothing? Okay, I'm going to play the theme music and give everyone a huge round of applause. Say thanks to everybody. A lot of food for thought this time, especially cake. I like the cake idea. We're gonna pass these visuals on. They are going to be on the website. Thanks to people on Facebook. Do keep those comments coming, because this is an ongoing discussion. What could that visualization of the health and Pendle look like? Would it look like this behind me, or would it be a rising and falling gasometer? Could it be something else? Could it be like projecting onto one of the big buildings in Pendle? Or lots of, I don't know, lots of ideas here, but thanks to everyone for taking part. But let's keep this conversation going. And next time we're going to be doing On the Move. So thanks everyone. I hope you could hear what I just said then, because apparently the music was a bit loud. But thanks everyone for joining, and we'll see you next time.
Yeah.
When is next time?
26th of August.
26th of August, so see you then.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye, Amy. Bye.
Bye.
Bye, Lisa. Bye, Shabazz. you still there, Shabazz? You all right?
You all right?
That was good.
Can't hear what you're saying, Shabazz. You've got to unmute.
Really got that. Sorry I was late, Paul.
Oh, no, you're right. I was checking.
We pick up the hand sanitizers and the face masks. So I got them in at 10:30.